The muted hum of the dishwasher was the loudest sound in the house, a constant, low thrum that seemed to vibrate not just through the kitchen floorboards, but deep within my chest cavity. I sat at the polished granite island, a half-empty mug of cooling chamomile tea before me, watching Mark's silhouette through the archway leading into the living room. He was absorbed, as he usually was at this hour, by the soft glow of his laptop screen, the occasional quiet click of keys, the only other interruption to the vast quiet. Our lives had become a symphony of these small, predictable sounds. The coffee grinder at 6 a.m., the garage door opening and closing at 7:30, the distant drone of his evening work. A perfect life, everyone said. A beautiful house in a desirable suburb, 2 steady careers, no children to complicate things, just the quiet companionship of our retriever Daisy, who was currently curled into a furry crescent by the fireplace, breathing in soft snores. Outwardly, it was a masterpiece of domesticity. The freshly cut flowers on the dining table, the perfectly fluffed throw pillows on the sofa, the subtle scent of lavender from the diffuser. I curated this space with an almost obsessive dedication, as if maintaining the illusion of perfection in our surroundings could somehow fill the gaping chasm that had begun to hollow out inside of me. Mark was a good man, kind, reliable, thoughtful in small ways, remembering my favorite brand of coffee, replacing a burnt-out light bulb without being asked. He was everything a wife could, should, want. But the silence was growing heavier each year. It wasn't just the absence of noise, but the absence of connection, of shared breaths, of the raw vulnerability that had once bound us together. Our conversations had become a logistical dance. Did you pay the electric bill? Don't forget the dry cleaning. What do you want for dinner? The easy laughter that used to ripple between us had faded into polite smiles, the spark in his eyes when he looked at me replaced by a comfortable, almost placid contentment. We slept in the same bed, our backs often facing each other, 2 separate islands drifting in a vast ocean of quiet understanding. The warmth of his body next to mine felt less like comfort and more like a physical barrier, a silent testament to the emotional distance that had crept in. I would lie awake, staring at the dimly lit ceiling, the weight of the blanket pressing down on me, feeling cold despite his presence. Sad. The only thing I felt in those moments was a dull, persistent ache behind my ribs, a hunger I couldn't name. Thoughtful, I'd try sometimes to bridge the gap. Curious, how was your day, really? I'd ask, trying to infuse my voice with genuine curiosity, with the desire for more than just a perfunctory summary. He'd shrug, same old, meetings, spreadsheets. And then he'd turn the question back to me, and I'd offer a similar, equally uninspired report. The moment would pass, the silence would settle back in, thicker than before, leaving me feeling like I'd just tried to catch smoke with my bare hands. The woman in the mirror each morning looked increasingly unfamiliar to me, a shadow, a presence that felt increasingly invisible, even to myself. Frustrated. Was this it? I'd ask myself. Was this the sum total of happiness, a predictable, comfortable life devoid of passion or profound connection? The thought was a bitter, lukewarm sip of reality, leaving a stale taste in my mouth, much like the forgotten tea beside me. The dating app download was a moment of weakness, fueled by a particularly quiet Tuesday evening that felt less like peace and more like impending suffocation. I hadn't even meant to look. My finger had just idly scrolled through the app store, a fleeting thought, a curious itch, just to see what's out there, I'd rationalized, my heart thumping a ridiculous rhythm against my ribs even then. No harm in looking. I entered a fake age range, used a blurry, distant photo, and scrolled through the endless parade of faces with a strange, detached fascination. It was like window shopping for a life I didn't have, a thrill I shouldn't be feeling. Most profiles blurred into a monotonous stream, but then a message popped up. A man named Alex. His profile picture was an outdoor shot, a genuine, easy smile, eyes crinkling at the corners. His message was simple, witty, about a shared love for obscure independent films. My stomach tightened, a familiar yet unwelcome jolt of adrenaline. Thoughtful. It was just an app, just a message, harmless, right? Rushed. I typed a hesitant response, my fingers hovering over the glowing keys as if they might burst into flames. The reply came almost instantly, a quick buzz vibrating through my palm, sending a shockwave directly to my chest. Gasps, My breath hitched. This was new. This was exciting. This was wrong. My heart started to race, a rapid, frantic rhythm that echoed the quick tapping of my thumbs. Thoughtful. The messages continued, a quiet, clandestine hum beneath the surface of my otherwise placid life. Alex talked about his day, truly talked, delving into the nuances of his work, his frustrations, his small victories. He asked about mine, and when I started to share, tentatively at first, he listened. He asked follow-up questions, probed deeper, made me feel seen, heard, understood. Things Mark no longer asked, things I no longer dared to volunteer. Grateful, he laughed at my dry humor, validated my anxieties, and encouraged my small, dormant dreams. Our conversation stretched late into the night, the phone screen a luminous rectangle under the covers, casting a secret glow on my face. Mark would be asleep beside me, his steady breathing a counterpoint to the wild thrumming of my own heart. I'd feel a blush creeping up my neck at some casual compliment, a silly joke, or a surprising revelation he'd shared. The adrenaline was intoxicating. Every notification, every new message was a shot of pure, unadulterated excitement. It was a secret world, a parallel universe where I was someone vibrant, interesting, desirable. The quiet, dull ache that had become my constant companion began to recede, replaced by a fizzing, effervescent energy. It's just talking, I'd tell myself, a mantra repeated to quell the rising tide of guilt. It's harmless, we're just friends. But I knew, deep down, that wasn't entirely true. The anticipation of his messages, the thrill of finding a quiet moment to respond, the clandestine deleting of conversations from the app, it all screamed a different truth. Energetic. I found myself smiling more, a genuine, unforced smile that would catch me off guard when I caught my reflection. I felt alive, in a way I hadn't felt in years. Sad, but it was a fragile, dangerous kind of life, built on secrecy and a growing, persistent thrum of fear. Then came the suggestion, surprised, a simple, "Want to grab coffee sometime? It'd be nice to actually talk, face to face." My blood ran cold, then hot. Gasps. Panic seized my throat, a dry, metallic taste blossoming on my tongue. Meeting? That crossed a line. That moved it from the ephemeral, digital world into the stark, tangible reality. Frustrated. "No!" my internal voice screamed. "You can't." But another, smaller, desperate voice whispered, "What if? What if he's everything you think he is?" The desire warred fiercely with the terror. I typed, then deleted, then retyped, my fingers trembling. Exhales sharply. Finally, with a deep breath that felt like it might rip through my chest, I agreed. "Yes, I'd like that." The day of the meeting arrived, cloaked in a fog of anxiety and feverish anticipation. I told Mark I was meeting an old college friend for lunch, a lie that felt flimsy on my tongue even as I carefully rehearsed it in my head. He nodded absently, already immersed in his morning news. The ease with which the lie slipped out, and the unconcern with which he received it, was a chilling realization. Did he care? Did he even notice? I spent an hour staring at my closet, a chaotic whirlwind of indecision. Too dressed up? Too casual? I finally settled on a simple blue dress, something I felt comfortable in, something that didn't scream, "trying too hard." My hands trembled as I applied a light layer of makeup, my reflection a stranger with eyes that seemed too wide, too bright. Every breath felt shallow, every beat of my heart a frantic drumroll against my ribs. The cafe was bustling, a cacophony of clattering cups and muffled conversations. The scent of roasted coffee beans and warm pastries hung heavy in the air. Excited, I spotted him immediately, sitting at a small table by the window, exactly as he looked in his profile picture, only more real, more vibrant. He looked up, and his eyes met mine, surprised. A shock, like a low-voltage current, jolted through me. He stood, a genuine, warm smile spreading across his face. "Clara!" His voice was deeper than I'd imagined, a rich timbre that vibrated in the air between us. "Alex!" Breathless, I managed, my voice a little breathless. My hand trembled slightly as he took it, his grip firm and warm. We ordered coffee, and the conversation flowed with an ease that both thrilled and terrified me. It wasn't forced, not awkward. We talked about everything and nothing,
Films, books, dreams, frustrations, the mundane details of our lives that suddenly seemed fascinating when filtered through his genuine interest. Laughs. I found myself laughing, a rich, unrestrained sound that felt unfamiliar yet utterly welcome. His eyes, a warm hazel, seemed to see past the facade, right into the parts of me that had been dormant for so long. Sad, 2 hours dissolved into thin air. The cafe lights had dimmed slightly, the afternoon sun now a softer glow through the window. "I should go," I said, a hollow ache beginning to form in my chest at the thought of leaving. He nodded, but his eyes held mine, a silent question passing between us. "Unless," he began, his voice dropping slightly, "you'd like to extend this a little? There's a quiet little bar just around the corner." Energetic, my heart pounded, a frantic rhythm against my ribs, my internal voice screamed, "No! Stop this! Go home!" But another part of me, a long-starved part, whispered, "Yes, just a little longer, please." Whispers. "Okay," I said, the word barely a whisper.
The bar was dimly lit, cozy. We slipped into a booth, the soft leather cool against my skin. The conversation continued, deepening, venturing into more personal territory. We shared stories of our childhoods, our insecurities, our deepest desires. I found myself confessing things I hadn't even consciously admitted to myself, let alone to Mark, in years. His hand, casually, gently, covered mine on the table. A warmth spread through my arm, through my chest, radiating outward, shocking my system back to life. It wasn't aggressive, not predatory, but a simple, profound connection that felt overwhelmingly right, and utterly, catastrophically wrong. Later, the air outside was crisp, the city lights beginning to shimmer. We walked, our shoulders occasionally brushing. The tension between us was a palpable thing, a live wire humming with unspoken desire. We reached his apartment building, an unassuming brick edifice. He stopped, turning to face me. "See me," his gaze intense. Gasps. My breath hitched in my throat. I knew with a dreadful certainty what was about to happen. My mind screamed protests, a chorus of, "No, don't, Mark, your life." But my body, starved for so long, yearned forward. He leaned in slowly, giving me every opportunity to pull away. My eyes fluttered shut. His lips were soft, warm, a tentative brush at first, then more insistent. The taste was new, unexpected, a mix of mint and something uniquely him. Excited. My arms, without conscious thought, wrapped around his neck, pulling him closer. The kiss deepened, a desperate, hungry claiming. My senses were overwhelmed, the soft scratch of his stubble against my cheek, the subtle scent of his cologne, mingling with the crisp night air, the electric jolt of his hands cupping my face. My whole body felt like it was humming, vibrating with a life I hadn't known it possessed. And then, his door was open, the soft click of it closing behind us. The world outside ceased to exist. In his living room, illuminated only by the faint glow of streetlights filtering through the blinds, we stood, still locked in an embrace. Rushed. My hands found the buttons of his shirt, fumbling, eager. The fabric was cool under my fingers. His skin was warm, smooth. Each touch was an exquisite agony, a sensation both exhilarating and terrifying. The clothes fell away, slowly, deliberately. Whispers. My skin, usually so guarded, felt hypersensitive, every nerve ending alive and tingling. When he finally pulled me close, skin to skin, the contact was a revelation. It was soft, intimate, utterly consuming. His whispered words, the brush of his lips against my ear, the press of his body against mine, it all merged into a single, overwhelming wave of sensation. And then, there it was. The moment the line was irrevocably crossed. A gasp escaped my lips, ragged and unfamiliar even to my own ears. A lightning bolt of pleasure, yes, but almost immediately followed by a chilling wave of, "Oh God, what have I done?" It was a duality, pure, unadulterated sensation intertwined with a crushing, suffocating shame. My eyes welled up, hot tears mixing with the sweat on my temples, a silent internal scream echoing against the rhythmic thump of his body. The release was not just physical, but also a strange, profound sadness, a sense of something broken, irrevocably. Afterward, the silence in his apartment was a different kind of heavy than the one at home. It was pregnant with unspoken consequence, with the weight of my betrayal. My body felt both spent and wired, a strange, hollow ache in my core. Thoughtful, I watched him sleep, the rise and fall of his chest, and felt an urgent, desperate need to escape, to rewind, to erase. Rushed. I dressed quickly, my movements clumsy in the dim light, each button of my dress feeling like a tiny confession. The walk home under the pale streetlights felt like an eternity. Each step was a leaden weight, each rustle of leaves a judgment. My skin felt dirty, tainted, despite the exhilarating touch that had just passed. Sarcastic. I rehearsed my new lie for Mark, a vague dinner with my friend, a headache that explained my flushed cheeks and disheveled appearance. Sad. When I finally unlocked the front door, the familiar scent of our home, lavender, Mark's aftershave, Daisy's dog smell, hit me with an almost physical blow. It was alien now, tainted by my secret. Mark was still asleep, a dark shape under the covers. Frustrated, I slipped into the bathroom, the shower water beating a frantic rhythm against my skin, as if trying to wash away not just the physical remnants, but the indelible stain on my soul. I scrubbed desperately until my skin was red and raw, but the feeling of dirtiness remained, clinging to me like a shroud. The double life began with a relentless, suffocating intensity. Each day was a carefully choreographed dance between the woman I was supposed to be, the dutiful wife, the successful professional, the meticulous homemaker, and the woman I had become, riddled with secrets and pulsing with a forbidden new energy. The initial guilt of that first encounter had been a sharp, searing pain, but it began to dull, softening into a persistent, throbbing ache beneath the surface. It was replaced, in part, by a perverse curiosity, an irresistible pull back towards Alex, a siren song promising escape from the numbing routine of my marriage. Our encounters became more frequent, always shrouded in layers of intricate lies. Working late, dinner with a colleague, girls' night out. Each lie was a tiny, self-inflicted cut. But the thrill of Alex's company, the intoxicating attention, the way he made me feel vibrant and alive, dulled the pain of the deception. Energetic. The secrecy itself became a potent stimulant, an addictive drug. My phone was an extension of my hand, constantly checked, messages deleted with practiced ease, call logs scrubbed. Every buzz, every notification sent a jolt of fear and excitement through me, a tightening knot in my stomach. I became a master of subtle concealment, turning my screen away, keeping my phone on silent, excusing myself from the room to send a quick coded message. Long pause. The paranoia was a constant companion, a whisper at the back of my mind. I'd jump at the sudden ring of the doorbell, my heart hammering, convinced it was Mark, having discovered everything. Sad, I'd freeze if he idly picked up my phone, even if there was nothing to find, imagining his eyes scanning deleted texts, seeing the phantom trail of my deceit. Gasps. Once, a forgotten cafe receipt for 2 coffees, dated from one of my working late nights, had nearly been discovered. I snatched it from the countertop where Mark was sorting mail, my blood running cold, my voice a forced lightness as I mumbled something about it being an old bill from a different lunch. Exhales sharply. The surge of adrenaline was so intense I could taste copper in my mouth. My hands trembled for an hour afterward. Thoughtful. I started to see Mark differently through the lens of my betrayal. He seemed utterly oblivious. A fact that alternately filled me with a crushing wave of self-loathing and a strange, contemptuous pity. Frustrated, how could he not know? How could he not see the change in my eyes, the way my hands would tremble when I poured his coffee, the new tightness around my mouth? Sad. His unwavering trust, his calm contentment, became a heavier burden than any anger or suspicion he might have shown. The mask I wore with him grew heavier each day, pressing down on my face, making my smiles feel brittle, my laughter hollow. I felt like an actress in my own life, playing a part I no longer recognized, delivering lines written by someone else. My personality began to splinter. With Alex, I was vivacious, spontaneous, the woman I longed to be. With Mark, I was distant, irritable, constantly on edge. My sleep became a battleground. I'd drift off, exhausted by the day's performance, only to be jolted awake by nightmares. Mark's face, contorted in anguish. Alex, turning away in disgust. A crowded room of strangers, all pointing, whispering. I'd wake up in a cold sweat, my heart hammering against my ribs, the lingering tendrils of guilt and fear a tangible presence in the dark. I lost my appetite, the thought of food curdling in my stomach. The persistent nausea became a familiar companion, a physical manifestation of the lie I was living. Alex and I had built a precarious world, a bubble of intense connection and shared secrets. He became my confessor, my confidant, the one who saw and understood me. But even that began to feel
Tainted. Curious. Was it love? Or was it just the desperate need for escape, for validation, for the fleeting warmth of being desired? The thrill, once so potent, started to wane, replaced by a dull, persistent ache of responsibility, a gnawing fear of the inevitable. The fantasy was fragile, built on sand, and I knew, with a dreadful certainty, that it couldn't last. Sad. The happiness I felt with Alex was always underscored by a deep, terrifying insecurity, knowing it was stolen, borrowed time. The crash, when it came, wasn't a sudden, cataclysmic event, but a slow, agonizing realization, like a ship taking on water, listing irrevocably. It began subtly, with the sheer exhaustion of the deception. Sighs. The mental gymnastics required to maintain two separate lives, two distinct personalities, had worn me down to a brittle, fragile shell. Every casual question from Mark about my day became an interrogation. Every unanswered call from Alex sent a jolt of panic, the fear that he was growing tired, that he would be the one to expose everything. Frustrated, the joy had seeped out of the affair, leaving behind only the bitter dregs of anxiety and guilt. Then came a particularly close call. Mark had, uncharacteristically, decided to surprise me at work for lunch. I was, of course, with Alex. The message arrived as I was leaving Alex's apartment, his text flashing on my screen. "Just stopped by your office. Couldn't find you. Guess you stepped out, grabbing a sandwich nearby." Gasps. My blood ran cold, fear an icy river through my veins. I felt a surge of nausea so intense I had to lean against a wall. Rushed, the frantic concoction of an immediate lie, the desperate call to a colleague to corroborate a fabricated meeting across town, the sheer terror of being exposed. It was a breaking point. The lie, though it held, left me shaking, bathed in a cold sweat for hours. The taste of acid filled my mouth.
That night, lying awake next to Mark, the quiet hum of the house suddenly felt oppressive, suffocating. I stared at the ceiling, my eyes burning, and saw my life, fractured and distorted. The perfect facade I had so carefully constructed was a crumbling ruin. I was destroying everything, not just my marriage, but myself. The woman I had become was a stranger, manipulative, dishonest, despicable. The self-hatred was a visceral, physical sensation, a tight band around my chest, making it difficult to breathe, a burning behind my eyes that made tears feel like molten lava. I wanted to claw out of my own skin. I hated the sight of myself in the mirror, hated the way my eyes seemed to betray 1,000 secrets, hated the constant tremor in my hands. The shame was a relentless presence, a weight on my soul. I started having full-blown panic attacks. My heart would pound like a trapped bird against my ribs. My breath would come in shallow, ragged gasps. My hands and feet would tingle with numbness. A cold sweat would slick my skin, and the world would tilt, threatening to swallow me whole. Crying. I'd feel an overwhelming sense of impending doom, as if the walls of my carefully constructed lie were about to collapse, burying me alive. Sleep was elusive, and when it did come, it was shallow, fragmented, filled with unsettling images and whispers of betrayal. My stomach churned constantly, unable to keep food down, my body physically rebelling against the internal torment. Sad, I was a walking wound, a raw nerve, unable to find a moment of peace. Thoughtful. The decision to confess wasn't a brave, sudden act. It was a slow, agonizing surrender to the unbearable weight of the secret. Sad. The fear of losing everything, Mark, our home, my carefully curated life, my own fragile sense of self, was immense, a terrifying beast that roared in my mind. But the alternative, continuing to live this bifurcated, dishonest existence, felt like a slow, agonizing death. Tearful, I longed for honesty, for the brutal, painful truth that might free me from the gilded cage of my own making. I yearned for the ability to look Mark in the eye without a screen of lies between us. It took days, maybe weeks of internal battle. Each morning I would wake with the intention, only to find my courage draining away by lunchtime. My jaw ached from clenching it, my head pounded with the constant internal monologue. Finally, one afternoon, sitting at the kitchen island, the same place where this slow unraveling had begun, I stared at my phone. Alex's number glowed on the screen. My fingers trembled as I typed out the words that would burn that bridge, that would dismantle the fragile world we had built. It was a short message, a farewell, a stark admission that I couldn't continue, that I was choosing my integrity, however tarnished it was now. The send button felt like a trigger. Then I stood up, my legs feeling like jelly, my mouth utterly dry, my heart hammered, a relentless, deafening rhythm. I could hear Mark's familiar footsteps in the hallway, coming home from work. My entire body felt like it was vibrating, humming with a terrifying energy. This was it, the moment I would dismantle everything. Sad. The fear was overwhelming, a tidal wave that threatened to drown me, but beneath it a tiny, desperate spark of hope for redemption flickered. I walked towards the living room, towards him, towards the truth, knowing my life was about to explode, but praying that from the ashes, something real, something honest, could finally begin to grow.